right, what's up, everybody? It is January 2nd, 2025. Happy New Year to everybody. We are back, Dos Leprechauns podcast. As you see in the studio, I'm solo Leprechauno today. Nate, like a lot of you, I think, did have to work. He'll be home in time just for the start of the game, so we're happy he'll be able to see the game at least, but unhappy that he won't be able to be here live with us on our show. But as you know, today we're breaking down all things Notre Dame versus Georgia. We're joined by our administrator and contributor, Jeff Strebejek. Jeff, thanks for jumping on, bud.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, man.
So obviously starting off kind of the elephant in the room, the dark cloud that was over the Sugar Bowl here the last 24 hours or so, and that was the brutal, senseless, and cowardly terrorist attack that occurred yesterday in New Orleans. We continue to pray for those victims, their families, the community as a whole. From what I can tell, based on everything I've seen on social media, and we have a couple of colleagues on the ground there, a couple of our contributors, Gary Canada, the Irish Giants on site, seems like everybody's feeling pretty strong, feeling pretty ready to go in terms of the safety aspect, in terms of just the overall atmosphere and vibe, which is great to see. In one of the videos today on our page, Gary actually saw the mayor of New Orleans, and she looked like she had a lot on her mind, obviously, but she did also say, thank you for being here. This is so important. And it is, man. These terrorists, all they want to do is disrupt and disturb our way of life and make us feel the misery that they feel like we deserve. And the more we stand up to that and say, we're not going to let you do that, the better off we're going to be as a country. And I personally am proud of how our team and specifically Coach Freeman have really responded to this situation. And nobody should really be surprised. Coach Freeman always hits the mark. And yesterday he was on Scott Van Pelt. If you haven't seen that interview, highly recommend it. Didn't talk too much about football, talked more about the, kind of the fallout, so to speak, of what happened from when they heard about the attack until the game being postponed and what they did to stay together as a team while still having an opportunity to mourn those 12 individuals that lost their lives yesterday. So just a really beautiful tribute. And as always, Coach Freeman had the right things to say, and we're just very lucky to have him as a coach. But all that being said, again, our hearts are heavy. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of New Orleans and those victims. We know they'll bounce back. They've dealt with Katrina. They've dealt with all kinds of stuff. They'll bounce back stronger than ever, like they always do. But in the meantime, we've got a game to talk about. We've got a game to play. The Irish are on the field now getting warmed up. And I don't think you can really, Jeff, take away from the magnitude of this game. This is one of, if not the biggest game in program history. And I know that may sound a little dramatic, but it's the second round of the playoffs. We got a big win versus Indiana, what seems like forever ago, about a week and a half ago. But now it's time to see if we really have turned that page from being SEC's little brother to competing with the SEC schools, the top of the SEC, the champions of the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you look at all the games of the games past of the 30-3s and the 42-17 and all the games where we were just completely overmatched. And right now I have this pit in my stomach going back into that. But I listen to a lot of Notre Dame contributors throughout the week who are on the ground in Georgia that are the beat writers for the different news outlets in like 247, On3, Rivals, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And this is the most this isn't about the past with the current regime. And that's one thing that I've taken away from this is the fans are the only people that are really tied into, oh man, we have PTSD from the past. And it really does stick with you and it resonates. And I'm sure it resonates with the players of the past. But this year's team, it just seems like they're completely locked in and focused on the present. And that's a big thing that Marcus has been saying. Focus on the present. It's one play, next play. And he mentioned that specifically in that Christian Gray interception against USC, where I think they've taken that mentality and they've ran with it this year. And I don't think that this Georgia team, regardless of how imposing they are on paper, scares them, because we've been on an 11-game winning streak, and we're in our eyes, we're 11-0 in the playoffs. Because every game since that has been a playoff game for Notre Dame. That's
a great point. And, you think back to the 11-game win streak that they're on right now, and And some people may throw shade and say, "Oh, they didn't play anybody." Well, a lot of the teams that they've played thus far, there's 8 teams that Notre Dame has played that had bowl games. Those 8 teams have gone 6-2, which is nothing to downplay. These are obviously teams that are, if you make a bowl game, I think any coach at maybe a mid-major or a team that's not usually super competitive is going to be excited about a bowl game. And that's their definition of success in a lot of cases. And in my opinion, bowl games are always important. So for 8 of our opponents to go to a bowl game, 6 of them to pull off a victory, that says a lot, in my opinion, about those teams that have beat. USC and Texas A&M played with SC winning, but those are also 2 teams that Notre Dame played. So, and they played competitively, and they obviously showed people what they can do. So, for those that want to play the 11 wins in a row, it's hard to win one game in college football nowadays with the portal and NIL. So to win 11 in a row, and most of them very convincingly, tells me, like you just said, that this is not your standard, prior Brian Kelly-led team that's going to go in there and get mollywopped by an SEC champion team like Georgia. And let's be honest, I'm not so concerned about the hype of this Gunnar Strickland kid. Obviously, he can throw it. He's a kid that set all kinds of records in the state of Georgia as quarterbacks go. But it's his first career start, and it's in one of Georgia's biggest games of the year. This is also one of Georgia's biggest games ever. It's not just Notre Dame's biggest game ever. This is the second round of the playoffs in order to get to the semifinals. So this is not just another game for Georgia. And to Kirby Smart's credit, all week he's been saying the same thing. Look, we're not taking Notre Dame lightly. We know they're a high-caliber team. We know they have a great defense and a good offense. We know they have experience and they have a good coaching staff. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. I don't really do score predictions, but I think this is going to be a shootout from start to finish. I think it's going to come down to the turnover battle, the time of possession battle. I know you'll get to that too, Jeff. Time of possession, turnover battle, and I really do believe this game will be won or lost in the trenches. Is our O-line going to be able to match up with this big, athletic, talented D-line? Is our D-line going to be able to get pressure on this young kid, cause him to have to throw the ball, which we've seen he can be erratic? It's going to be a really cool chess match to see.
Oh, I can't agree with you more on the chess match and the shootout. The shootout, I would love to see a high-scoring game. I just don't see that happening just because of the fact of there's going to be so much will imposed on the front lines, where I think it's going to be an absolute dogfight, like you said, where Notre Dame's going to impose their will, put their best foot forward, and Kirby Smart always has something in his sleeve. And I give it to Kirby Smart because he's been truly one of the most dominant football coaches in the past 5 years. And I mean, his national titles speak for themselves, as well as the playoff appearances. It's going to be a game of matchups, and I think some of the biggest matchups that we're going to see are on the edges, and then on the interior of the offensive and defensive line. What Notre Dame's going to be going up against is quite the formidable task with a Buckus Award winner, a potential first round. I mean, I think there's 3 or 4 potential first round picks in Georgia's defense alone. So Michael Williams is a name to look out for on the edge. He's most likely going to be lined up against the Napper at left tackle. And I saw on some boards that people brought up Anthony Knapp's Rivals and 247 account as him being the 67th or 62nd rated offensive lineman in the class of 2024. Guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You throw your 4 and 5 stars all out there. I'm going to take this over a website's appearance of what they think you are as a star. Because I'll tell you right now, Notre Dame is filled with 4 and 5 stars on that field on the defensive side of the ball as well. And we have those on the offensive side too. So matchup wise, Georgia is going to come in and they're going to think they're bigger. They're going to think they're stronger. They're going to think they're faster, regardless what Kirby Smart says, because they are the SEC and that's what the SEC thinks.
Real quick note on what you just said with Knapp. We are probably the presidents of the Anthony Knapp fan club over here at Dos Leprechauns. There's a video, I'm going to have to find it and post it, of him in high school where he drive blocks some poor linebacker 10, 15 yards off the ball, drops the linebacker, then does like a somersault over the kid. It was freaking awesome. So since then, I've been a huge Knapp fan. But to your point about Anthony Knapp, Is he going to be challenged? Absolutely. Was he challenged against A&M and Nick Scorton and those guys? Absolutely. Guess what? Guess what? He rose to the occasion, and guess what? Anthony Knapp is a freaking freshman All-American, baby. So clearly, those that make those decisions think very highly of Anthony Knapp, as do we. And if you look at the film, and I was going back and looking at our O-line this whole past week, I love the way our O-line matches up against pretty much anybody. They play very, very they play nasty, and that's what I like.
Physicality.
They're going to hit you in the mouth.
Exactly. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and if they get punched in the mouth, they're going to respond, which they have. And I mean, I remember one block at the IU game, and that was a 98-yard touchdown. Jeremiah Love, who was the lead blocker that pulled off and did a little run out block to create that lane for Jeremiah Love. It was Anthony Knapp.
Absolutely.
So I don't care what anyone says about how old these kids are. Notre Dame has a team filled with freshmen and sophomores on both sides of the ball. So youth, experience, call it what you want. Notre Dame has 13 games of experience on that field right now, 13 plus game of experience across the board, because those guys have earned the respect of every opponent they have faced up until this point.
Yep. And you think about some of the injuries they've had, right? I mean, Jagasaw goes down and guys step up. You name it, we've had guys go down on our front seven, both sides of the ball, which I wanted to talk about real quick. And I know there's been some comments here already about the middle part of our defensive line, which there is no way around it, guys. Georgia losing Carson Beck, huge blow, right? They get a 5-star kid coming in to back them up, whatever. Notre Dame loses Riley Mills, huge blow. In my opinion, in my personal opinion, a humble opinion, it's a bigger blow to us losing Riley Mills than it is to Georgia losing Carson Beck. That may sound controversial, but Riley Mills has come on like an absolute freaking animal the last 4 or 5 games. And not having that pressure from him up front in the middle of our D line is going to be tough. There's no way around it. However, don't sleep on Gabe Rubio, folks. He was hurt the end of last year, had some personal stuff going on, but he has come back and he's made the most of his opportunities to play this year. If you don't know about Gabe Rubio, go watch some film of USC of
IU when he came in.
He's going to be in the backfield. He's going to create havoc. And I personally think you're going to see a rotation of Gabe Rubio and Sean
Sevillano.
I think Sevillano is going to play a lot. He's obviously a thicker, big body kid, very, very strong, hard to move. Am I worried about our front seven or our front line? Absolutely. Do I think we're going to be able to get after the quarterback? Absolutely. Because we're going to bring the house, because Coach Golden trusts Christian Gray and more on the outside. So they're going to be on an island. And with that, we also have some guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, his name's Xavier Watts, who's going to be able to help out. Another guy named Don Schuler, who's coming on like a freight train. So am I worried? Sure, of course. It's freaking Georgia. It's an SEC power. But do I think we're going to be okay? Absolutely. Again, it's going to come down to turnovers. It's going to come down to time of possession. And I think we match up well with Georgia on that front.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And another name to look out for, just following the press conferences with Al Golden and whatnot, is redshirt freshman Armel Mukum.
Yeah, good call.
What was a 23 incoming guy who Armel's put on 30 pounds. He came in as an edge rusher, not very highly recruited as some of Notre Dame guys are, but he's really taken that into effect of where he wants his name called. Brendan Vernon's another guy who moved inside. So I could see a battle by committee with Notre Dame's depth as it stands right now. And it just shows what Riley Mills put forth onto the field for Notre Dame week in and week out. He was kind of a non-factor the first couple weeks, and then he pulls together a couple games with sacks, and then he gets 3. He gets 3 against Florida State. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where Riley Mills is going to be playing on Sundays, and he's going to be a force on Sundays as an interior lineman. It's going to be huge, but like you said, Gabe Rubio, he's got a motor. That kid's got a motor, and when you look at him and he's got the 1-bar face mask, you know he's ready to go, and you know there's business.
He's got that. He's got the face paint on both sides. He's a monster, man.
Him and Cross are Cross is not the biggest guy, but I will say I am scared shitless of Howard Cross when, excuse my language, when you look at him and his face is completely black with face paint.
Yep.
And you know what? You know these guys are going to go to battle. And then we go into our linebacking core with Kaiser, Bowen, Osbury, Snead, and I think we're going to see KVA on some packages. He looked relatively good in some of the videos that were posted online, and you bet that he's going to try to play. And Jalen Snead's been a pleasant surprise too. Ever since his role has been increased since KVA's been down.
Correct.
I like our chances on the defensive side of the ball, and Georgia's defensive side of the ball. I like their chances too in succeeding because they're just as quick, if not faster at some positions. But matchup to matchup, defense to defense, yeah, they got some bigger guys. They do that purposely up front. They go 2-3 down linemen only because they love to send pressure from their linebackers. They have the Buckets Award winner in Walker. They have a guy named Chaz Chambliss that's kind of like their jitterbug energizer bunny coming from the outside who plays kind of a rover position. Their inside's Nazir Stackhouse and another guy named Wally Brinson, who are 305 pounds and 325 pounds, 6'4", 6'5". That's gonna wear down an offensive line. But I'm not saying that they're going to wear down Notre Dame's offensive line from the get-go. No. The biggest thing is who's going to win the war of attrition.
With the line, you mentioned the linebackers. There's been so much hype on the Georgia linebackers, and you feel like our guys, Bowen, Osbury, Kaiser, KVA, kind of get lost in the shuffle. So I know you covered a lot of the defense. You've been looking at a lot of their stuff. What makes their linebackers so dynamic? And their linebackers are guys that can maybe challenge our spectacular running back room to get those yards that we're so used to seeing them get.
North and South, I'll tell you one thing right now. North and South, they're the quickest defense we'll see all year. North and South, their linebackers get downhill fast, and they get into the backfield. They run a lot of stunts up front, a lot of switches, try to get the offensive line to move. Get offensive linemen out of position to create different holes in the gaps. And that's their defense by trade. One of the biggest things that I did see, on the contrary of being a strong defense, their linebackers do not play very well in coverage. You see a lot of big, imposing 235 to 250-pound linebackers that run downhill fast. But when you get them spread out, which they like to be, but they're not running downhill and they're playing like it's zone coverage, they get slew-footed. They get cross-footed. One of the biggest games that I saw that in was Ole Miss with Jackson Dart and even Haynes King, where they were running underneath routes, out routes, outside of the numbers. They're not throwing deep routes, so don't think that we're going to be throwing the ball all over the field because their defensive secondary is very strong as well. Yep. With Dan Jackson and Malachi Starks kind of leading that way with Dalen Everett. But I think we could get some underneath plays, and I like our receiving core being strong. And I think we're gonna have to get underneath on them passing the football to create some of the running, because that's gonna get their linebackers not going forward. That's gonna get their linebackers kind of settling in, like saying, hey, we gotta respect Riley Leonard. We got to respect Riley Leonard in the passing game. So big games out of like Jaden Greathouse, Eli Reardon, Mitchell Evans going underneath from the slot and the tight end positions, I think is going to be crucial in beating this defense outside of our running game.
Absolutely. And that's great points on that. I think that the secondary is often overlooked for Georgia, but Malachi Starks is an absolute playmaker. And he's somebody that if Riley Leonard is not on his game, is going to get some interceptions. If Riley throws things up there, stares down his first read, doesn't look at his second read, doesn't look at his third read, and just starts zeroing in on one guy or the other, he's going to pick the ball off, and we're going to be in trouble. So you know that Coach Denbrock has prepared for this. You know that sure. Coach Denbrock is ready for Kirby Smart's, prolific defensive schemes and all these different things he's going to throw at us. You know he's ready for that. Denbrock was brought in for these types of freaking games. Texas A&M, Georgia, Indiana, all these big, huge games that we've been involved with. This is why we went and got the gray-haired coach, the guy that knows what he's doing, the guy that coached the Heisman Trophy winner last year. I think that is a huge advantage that we have, is that we have a guy in there that knows how to counter some of this stuff from Kirby Smart. So I did want to talk a little bit about Georgia's offense. One guy that, in my opinion, I don't think I've heard him mentioned. You hear a lot about Etienne, the running back. Frazier, obviously, two absolute bell cows. I think, Frazier had 634 yards rushing this year, so he obviously can get after it. Their leading receiver is Anelli Smith, who is a smaller receiver, but he's very fast. But one guy that a young quarterback's favorite weapon is usually going to be your tight end, right? And they have a very good tight end who doesn't get a lot of love. I love the tight end position.
Yes.
This kid is really good. Lawson Lucky, the tight end for Georgia, big body, 6'4", 240 pounds. He's your kind of your typical Georgia tight end, right? He's going to go out and catch the ball. Probably not going to block a lot. Definitely not on the level of a Brock Bauer, but he can definitely catch the football. He doesn't really block a whole lot. But with the two receivers that they have, the two running backs and Lawson Lucky, Gunner's going to have a lot of guys to throw to and a lot of guys that can catch the ball and have been there. So don't sleep on the Georgia offense. They're very, very good. A lot of weapons, but you don't have one dynamic playmaker, but you have about 3 or 4 guys that can definitely do some damage with the ball in their hands.
Another guy to just harp on that is Oscar Delp. Oscar Delp is another guy who is a tight end that complements Lawson Lucky. I think they play mostly every down because they go a lot into a 2 tight end formation, because I don't think they really have the receiving core of like the George Pickens, like where you have a guy that they could throw downfield. Carson Beck gets a lot of his money in yak. He gets a lot of his yardage when he was passing the ball in yak yardage with these tight ends, with these receivers. They run a very dynamic offense through Mike Bobo, who's been at Georgia, I think 2 times now.
Mm-hmm.
They brought him back after Lanning left, I believe. So it's one of those things where I think we're going to really have to cue in on Frazier and Etienne are going to be our point 1 and point 2, and then we're going to have Gunner Stockton. Another thing that I was listening to is Gunner Stockton. His average yardage per pass was only like 5.5 yards that SEC championship game. I don't see much of that changing, because they're going to want to hang on to the football.
Yeah,
they're going to want to wear Notre Dame's defense down. Why? Well, look at our depth. Our depth has been there all year for us, but when you get into these big games, not saying that their team isn't injured or has injuries or is nagging injuries, but I know from a Notre Dame perspective, our defense cannot be on the field for lengthy periods of time, drive after drive after drive. And that proves to the point that we have to be efficient with the football on offense.
Yeah, and so Gunner, again, he's not going to – I don't think he's going to be able to burn us deep, mainly because of our corners and Xavier Watts. They're going to be very cautious about trying to air it out with a young kid like that. However, just like Riley Leonard, he can make plays with his feet, and they will do some fine runs with this kid. He's tough as nails too, man. He took a hit. He took a hit against Texas that any mortal man might have been out for the game, and he popped right back up and got back in there. So, credit to this Georgia team. They are not the dominant, dynamic Georgia teams of old, but they're freaking good, man. They're a very good. There's a reason they're the number 2 ranked team in the playoffs, and there's a reason they got the bye. There's a reason they won the SEC. We cannot. And I don't think they will. I think Freeman's got this team locked in and fired up, but they're going to come out. This is not going to be a walk all over you, Miami of Ohio, or in an SC where, you know what? They scored. Okay, cool. Let's get the ball back and go score. No, we're going to have to fight for every yard and every single point. Somebody earlier said, hopefully don't have to rely on Mitch Jeter this game. I would echo that. However, he showed up in the Indiana game.
Yes.
And every kicker goes through spells. I mean, Justin Tucker, for crying out loud, this year had 3 or 4 misses that you think would be chip shots. So is Jeter had some rough patches? Absolutely. Did we still win those games? Absolutely. Do I hope that it comes down to a 45-yard field goal to win it? Hell no. But at the same time, I think if it came down to that, I do have confidence in Jeter at this point.
We found that out yesterday in the Arizona State Texas game.
Exactly.
Bert Auburn is one of the most tenured kickers in the NCAA and missed not one but two key kicks that could have ended that game in regulation for Texas.
Yep.
So, and we all know poor Kenny Dillingham and his kicking issues with him offering walk-on spots for kickers at the beginning of the season, if you remember.
Right.
And they had their first block kicked. But I do think special teams is going to play a factor in this game because points are going to be hard to come by, Jason. And I think I like Mitch Jeter, and I think James Rendell is going to be just as important in this game in flipping the field. So I think Marty Biaggi took a lot of time in this 10, 12-day period. What was it, 10 days? Of really kind of explaining and breaking down film, breaking down everything with our specialists on how important it is to flip the field and then to get field goals, to get into field position and get us into a position to score with our field goal unit. And I'm sorry, people could say what they want about Mitch Jeter, but yes, he had a rough stretch. He wasn't fully healthy. I'm not making an excuse on that. But he nailed that 48-yarder against IU, and I was there sitting, freezing my ass off, and he hit that field goal in 15-degree weather, and that's an East Coast Carolina boy doing that in the cold weather. I think Mitch Jeter is going to be ready and locked in because he was an extremely successful kicker at South Carolina, and I hope I'm not wrong on this, but I have faith in Mitch Jeter.
Love it. Yeah, special teams will be huge today. Punt, Rendell's going to need to have a big game. Coverage unit's going to have a big game. And Biaggi just won special teams coordinator of the year. So obviously, again, he had a good year. We've had quite a few block punts. And as I do every game, we already had our love fest for Anthony Knapp today. But as I do every single week since he got on the freaking field, keep Bryce freaking Young in the game. He is a friggin' monster. He's going to make plays, and he's going to make people remember his name for the next 3 years. That I'm telling you, dude. That dude right there is a freak of nature.
He got a special shout out from Kirby Smart. I mean,
love it.
When you're getting Kirby Smart was very methodical with his words during the press conferences because I think he has the respect in Notre Dame, and I think Kirby knows that Notre Dame's going to come to play, and they're going to come to play physical.
Yep.
And him comparing us to an SEC team, you know what? Notre Dame, pat yourself on the back because we don't want to be like that. We want to play Notre Dame football.
Amen.
The SEC is the standard, but Notre Dame wants to be Notre Dame. So thank you for the compliment that we're finally there. And I think we just need to implement that moving forward and say, hey, we could bang with the boys.
You know what? And it's funny because with the NIL now and the transfer portal, everything's changed. So the SEC has had a rough time in the postseason this year. I mean, for crying out loud, Bama got smoked by Michigan, and they had all their studs in there still. So it's interesting. I do want to get to one comment here from Mike Adams on YouTube. Looks like just have some technical difficulties. He said, "Oh, go ahead."
No, we're good.
No, I would say Mike Adams here on YouTube.
We're good.
I want to talk about with you. Says, what do you say to those who say Beck was not playing well and Stockton is a bigger threat? I'll let you take that one.
That's kind of a double-edged sword. Carson Beck has not had the season that everyone has anticipated as a Heisman campaign. He was intended to be kind of a front runner for the Heisman this year, just based off of last year, and turnovers killed him this year. And I saw that Joe Fighting Irish Faithful posted a plus 15 turnover margin between us and Georgia. Georgia has that turnover margin at such a low point because of Carson Beck. He had 12 interceptions this year, and he was very susceptible in throwing the ball to a different color than the other team. So he had his moments this year where he showed up. I do think Gunnar Stockton poses a bigger threat in this fact. He has had 77 snaps on the offensive side of the ball all season. That is not enough game film to really kind of break down tendencies of Gunnar Stockton. You got a big body of work out of him in, I think, 52 snaps against Texas. but that was kind of like, hey, Gunner, get the hell on the field and just control the ball. You know, and there were points where I think I heard Golden of like even breaking down his high school film, like
Right.
because you want to get as much as you can out of this kid because you don't know what he's going to do, and that could be a big play-in. So I think that could pose a threat.
You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. My thoughts is that, yeah, he's the unknown factor, right? Not only do we know for a fact he's talented, but he's the unknown. What is this kid? What can he really do with pressure in his face? We've only seen one very small sample size of that. That said, I put Notre Dame's pass rush and linebackers up against Texas any day of the week. So it's going to be a different kind of pressure. You're going to see some really exotic blitz schemes from Coach Golden, and that's going to be interesting to see how he handles that. If anybody can figure out a way to maneuver around those, it's Kirby Smart and Bobo. So this is going to be just a really fun chess battle, in my opinion. This is the game of the second round. You know, I knew for a fact Ohio State was going to roll Oregon. Texas and ASU instant classic, whatever. ASU won that game, phantom targeting penalty, but I'll leave that alone. I think this is the marquee game, and this is the game that, in my opinion, the winner of this game goes on to play Ohio State in the national championship game. And I will tell you that I think that I've never been this confident about an Irish team in my life. Normally for these kind of games, I got to put some Pepto-Bismol in my system and all that. And for just when I think about the guys that we have and just how hard they play, how physical they play, and then you think about Coach Freeman, Coach Denbrock, Coach Golden, I just feel like this team is at the right place at the right time with the right leadership. And I'm pumped, man. I really think this is the opportunity for us to do it. I want to go back real quick and say, so we had a Georgia fan in here, which I got to give credit to him. That's cool, man.
I like it.
It's BLST on YouTube, says go Dogs. Okay, whatever. And then it says if Gunner plays well, Irish are done. Can't really disagree with that. If he comes out and balls out and doesn't turn the ball over and he deals with that, the Coach Golden pass rush, it's going to be a long freaking day for the Irish because we know they're going to be able to run the ball with Frazier and Etienne. So if they can then spread the field out with Gunner throwing the football and not making mistakes, it's going to be a tough day for us. But that said, on the other side of the football, Riley Leonard has gotten better each game. And this is going to be – okay, so let's do this, Jeff. Key players of the game on both sides of the ball for the Irish. I'll give mine first. Offense, I'm going to say it's going to be Riley Leonard and Anthony Knapp. You mentioned the edge rush for Georgia. I think if Knapp can do what he did against Texas A&M and all year, really, Riley's going to have the time that he needs to make things happen. And I think that Riley's going to have – this is his game, man. Become a legend. Become a Notre Dame legend today, Riley. Go run the ball. Don't turn the ball over. Make the throws you need to make. Find your open receivers, and let's go and become a legend. Defensively, our guy, Drake Bowen, he's going to be the hammer. We know that's going to happen. But more importantly for me, I want to see Drake say, F this. This is my team. This is my defense. I'm going to lead this team into battle. And we're going to shut that run down, and we're going to get in Gunner's face and cause some havoc. So those are my two for offense. I forgot the other. Defensively, Gabe Rubio. If Gabe Rubio has a big game at that down tackle position, it's going to be a long day for Georgia, and I think he will. So Gabe Rubio, Drake Bowen. Defensively, Riley Leonard, Anthony Knapp on the offensive side of the ball. So
I love those picks, especially that first defensive pick. It really goes near and dear with my heart. Stole my pick, but I'm going to be non-biased on that, and I'll pick different ones, unfortunately. Sure. So offensively, you hit it with Riley Leonard. I'm going to go with two opposite ones. I'm going to go with our two guards, Rocco Spindler and Billy Trouth. Those guys have been beat up. Spindler right now has I presume Spindler and Strauss' ankles are going to look like just white blobs of tape. Especially Spindler, because I do think he suffered a severe roll. And he said he's 100%, and I'm expecting 100% because Rocco has faced a lot of adversity in a Notre Dame uniform, being pulled, not winning his spot at the beginning of the year to Sam Pendleton. So it's one of those where I think that we're going to need to really just step up at those guard positions, because that's taking those interior alignments and creating those A and B gaps for our running game and the QB power for Riley Leonard. So I'm going to say our 2 Irish guards. And then after that with Spindler, if Spindler's rotated, I saw Charles Jagisaw as our second string right guard. So we might see a Charles Jagisaw sighting, but I also think that we'll see Sam Pendleton. This is a long-winded answer, but I think how fresh our offensive line is, regardless who we have out there, is going to be very important. And then Riley Leonard, of course, is going to be the X factor. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to have to say our edge rushers, because I think that Tate Rutledge on the outside is going to get a havoc from Bryce Young. Bryce Young is going to be an X factor in this game, and I think we're going to see a lot of one-on-one on the outside because they're going to be trying to run up the middle. They don't like to go outside. That's why you see not as much. They like to get to the second line of defense with our backers, so they create holes in the middle to get there. And I'm going to also say I think we're going to need a big game from like Jaden Osbury and Jalen Sneed rushing the passer. So I gave 3 there. I think our linebacking core as a unit is going to be my like number 1 pick, because we're going to have to keep them from getting to the second line, regardless of how well we tackle, because this is going to be a game of who could stay in front of the sticks.
Yep.
And it's going to rely on both teams' running games. So I'm just a ball of emotions right now, and have been waiting for this game for a long time, because I've always had faith in the Irish. I've always said, man, I think we could win this game, and then we get splattered. Right. And that was of the past. And my love for Marcus Freeman, and I will stand next to him whenever I want. But I think Marcus Freeman's going to have these boys prepared, and I think we're going to pull out a dub today.
You know what? Perfect ending, perfect book in there, Jeff. That was a great segue there. I definitely agree with you. Gary Canaday, one of our other administrators, is on site. He's inside the Mercedes-Benz Bowl, whatever it's called.
He made the TV down there.
He made local news twice, and he's kind of been a freaking celebrity already, taking a picture of this giant monster in a kilt.
Well, it's the kilt. He's a giant monster, but it's the kilts.
It's the kilt.
Ladies, TV. Yep.
Ladies love the kilts. In fact, that might be a T-shirt one day. But to your point, man, he sent me a video right now. One of the things that Freeman does, and I know a lot of coaches do this kind of stuff. Freeman goes up to every single suited player, dressed player at every single game, pats him on the back, shakes their hand, tells him he loves them. It gives me I got goosebumps right now. Think about that. That right there is leadership, and it's sincere leadership. It's not just go, hey, I love you, kid, whatever, go score a touchdown. It's, hey, you effed up on that play, one play, one life, go make another play. It's, I believe in you, I trust in you, and we're going to make this thing happen together. We're going to get better. Freeman, I am so glad we locked him up for so long, because the continuity he's going to create from a recruiting perspective, from a big game perspective, from just a coaching perspective and a culture perspective is massive. And you see that growing every single day. And this game right here is where it's like, okay, cool. We've created this culture. We're at this point in time. Now can we take that giant leap to get to that elite status? Because right now I would say we're a very, very good program on the way up to elite status. Are we already elite, or do we still have a little bit to go to become elite? So
great point. Great point.
That said, I'm going to stop talking because it's gone way too long, and we only got 23 minutes of game time. You guys got to go pour your beers, go get your whiskey ready to roll, get home from work if you're listening to this on the radio. Nate, we'll see you in 23 minutes. Jeff, we'll talk to you on the text line. I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. If you're a pickleball player, you've got to get this new paddle that was gifted to us by TMPR Sports as part of a sponsorship opportunity. I'm a pickleball player, fanatic. I'm a pickleball fanatic. I play 4, 5, 6 times a week. And this is one of the better paddles from a performance standpoint. But how can you beat the Notre Dame Leprechaun being on your freaking pickleball paddle on both sides?
Not gonna lie, I wanted one for Christmas.
The intimidation factor alone is enough to scare people away. So check them out, TMPR Sports. They're on Instagram at TMPR Sports. Their website is www.tmprsports.com. We'll leave that in the show notes on YouTube as well. But this paddle is sick, guys. It's not just like a cheap paddle they bought at Walmart and they decided to put this logo on it. No, this is a full-on, it's USA Pickleball approved, made in the USA also, which is hugely important. So go grab yourself a pickleball paddle at TMPR Sports. We'll continue to give them some love on the next few shows, and I'm going to use that paddle in a tournament I'm playing in a few weeks, and hopefully it brings me some luck. So that said, we'll see you guys after the game again, like we always do. Win, lose, or draw, we'll be back to break down the game and have some celebration, and look forward to the semifinals, hopefully. With that, Jeff, thanks for joining us. Everybody have a blessed day. Prayers for all the people involved with the tragedy in New Orleans. God bless all of you. Hope you had a happy New Year. Go Irish, beat Georgia.